Okay, you ready to start?
Yes.
Being the appointed hour, I hereby call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to order. First order of business, let's see. I think we need to do a roll call.
That's correct. Okay, Mark Bartner,
Yes, present.
Jim Morrison,
Here.
Gregory Rush,
Here.
Michael Hoyka,
Here.
Trip Ewer,
Here.
Tim Thompson,
Here.
Rich Parsons,
Here.
and Molly,
Fails.
Bales, sorry, I was going to say Bates. Molly Bales is expected to arrive late. We'll see though. She's currently absent. We have a quorum.
Okay, very good. Our skipping the minutes tonight, our next item of business will be the consent agenda for approval of written decisions from the prior meeting. Do any of the commissioners care to pull one of those, or would a commissioner care to make a motion to?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the written decision for 818 Broad Street.
Got a motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the consent agenda is approved. I think we'll move into our hearings now, and to get us started, just a little background. The Historic Preservation Commission is a public commission appointed by the City of New Bern's Board of Aldermen. It is responsible for preserving and safeguarding New Bern's locally designated historic districts, being downtown and Riverside, using U.S. Department of Interior standards, state statutes, city ordinances, and New Bern's historic district guidelines. Two of the major tasks of the HPC include approving applications for a certificate of appropriateness and preventing demolition of historic structures due to neglect. The HPC holds a quasi-judicial hearing on an application for a certificate of appropriateness. We will hear sworn testimony and evidence provided by the applicant, provided by parties who received notice of the hearing, and provided by others who can justify that they have relevant evidence and are directly affected by the application. The Commission cannot consider comments based on personal likes or dislikes, hearsay, or personal opinion that cannot be directly related to specific historic guidelines. Likewise, Commissioners, I ask you to refrain from stating personal opinion, personal likes or dislikes, or hearsay during our hearing this evening. The Commission's decision on an application is based solely on the testimony and evidence presented at this hearing that directly relates to historic guidelines. At this point, Matt, we need to swear in members of the public who will be speaking tonight.
Right, you get to swear us all in?
Yep.
So if you intend to be speaking or might be speaking this evening, come forward and we will swear you in. And if you sometimes during the proceedings you would like to speak and haven't been sworn in, just let us know. Raise your hand when you want to speak and let us know you haven't been sworn in yet. We'll swear you in then. All right? So please come forward. And just because you're sworn in doesn't mean you have to speak. All right.
All right.
So please raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, all affirmative.
Then please,
I believe you need to sign in.
print your name and address, and I have 2 sheets of paper. And this is going to place this back.
The address you're speaking on?
No, your business or
Must be a slow night in the city of New Bern. We've got a lot of people here.
Yes.
Let's see, Mike, if you would just help me try to keep track in case someone who is not sworn in, just Mike. Usually somebody on the bench catches it. But,
I wasn't paying attention.
well, that's okay. It's this
That's right.
week.
Remember too.
All right, and so as we have our last two potential presenters signing in, I'm going to go ahead and summarize the hearing process that we'll use tonight. The HPC administrator will provide an overview of the application. The applicant or their representative will present the application. We'll have an opportunity for proponents and opponents who received written notice to participate. Then we'll have a rebuttal period. Then we'll have an opportunity for others who can produce information that is directly tied to the guidelines to participate. Ultimately, once we've had a chance for everybody to speak and all questions to be asked, we'll ask for a recommendation from staff, and then the applicant has a final opportunity to make any final comments. Ultimately, following a question and answer period by the commission, we'll call for a vote. We'll have some kind of outcome, and a COA can be either approved with conditions, or it could be denied. So with that in mind, I think we're ready to roll to our item A, or actually B, under hearings for 403 East Front Street. And I understand that they are looking for a continuance to the September 18th, 2024 regular meeting. So could we have a motion to deal with that?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we continue the hearing for 403 East Front Street to the next regularly scheduled meeting at 5:30 at this location on September 18th, 2024.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I think the purpose of the continuance is so the applicant can gather more information. As I understand it, have we checked all the boxes, Counselor?
Yes, sir, so long as Mr. Thompson's motion was made for the basis of allowing the applicant an opportunity to present additional information.
Correct. And who was our second?
Jim.
Jim, is that okay with you? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Very good. Our next item on the agenda, 104 Johnson Street.
Okay, I will start with presentation of the application. And to note on this is that all demolitions go through a two-phase voting process or consideration process with a vote at the end of each consideration. The first consideration will be for the demolition, and the second will be for the redevelopment or the new build on the site. So first, sorry, I skipped the very top of the application. Shows the property owner and the applicant, and the project description in very basic terms, and then also referencing several of the design guideline sections, and a detailed description in this little space. They say, though, to also reference the attached material list, which is a 3-page description. And then they've checked all the relevant check boxes, and has been signed by the owner's authorized representative and dated. And this is their authorization form for Shepherd Response to appear for Mr. French. And so just to give an orientation now for the audience as well as any of the board members who are not at the design review meeting. We have some aerials showing the context from an aerial point of view in terms of the proximity of buildings and other open spaces around the property. The property is indicated there in the blue box. Here's a zoom in to get maybe some additional info if we need with regard to some details about the immediate adjacency along the property lines. We also staff provided some street view photographs for reference. So this is, the top photo is the subject house in the background behind the shrubs and trees. And then to the south of that property is the next, across the street on Johnson Street is the house on the southeast corner of the intersection. You can see it is a brick house with at least 2.5 stories. What you can't see in that photograph so well is it is also elevated quite a bit off of the surrounding grade. And the third photograph now is the southwest corner, also a brick house with 2, possibly 3 stories, depending how you count them, also on an elevated foundation. And then the fourth corner is the northwest corner, and you can see that's 2.5 stories with a wraparound porch, in this case with wood siding. And so some more of the context relevant to the project is to go down East Front Street, and we'll see just with the Google Street View images that as you go down the street, you can see left and right some of the buildings along the way, some of the houses. So immediately next to the property is the building to the right of that truck, and across the street from that is the next house past the one with the wraparound porch. And as we go down, we see more houses on the left, and then on the right, 2 stories with a porch on the front. On the right, 2.5 stories with a porch on the front there. Then the next ones are on the left. You can barely see half of that house, but it's a 2-story with a porch on the front. And then on the right is an Italianate style 2-story structure house. And then the next one's down East Front Street. Again, on the left, first on the very far left is a 2.5-story with a porch, and the next one is also a 2.5-story with a porch. And then on the right is a 2, and I can't tell if it's 1.5 or not, but with a porch. And then lastly, as you get down to the King Street, you turn around and you can see the other 2. So on the east side is on the left, and on the west side is on the right. So the east side on the left is 2.5 stories, again a porch on the front, and on the right is a 2.5-story also with, in this case, a wraparound porch. And heading back, all the way back to the Johnson Street intersection, and then going past the 2 houses that are on the corner, heading south on East Front Street, we have another 2.5-story brick home on the left, and on the right is the 2-story, also with a porch, in this case set back from the street house. That's almost a sentence. And then we went and revisited the same series of buildings, but this time with a frontal view instead of that angle view. So here we see on the right is the house immediately to the north of the subject property, and then the second house adjacent along to the north of the property. And then the next 2, these are now all on the east side of East Front Street. So that's the Italianate one on the left. And then this next set of photos is the one at the corner of King Street, and then two to the right of that in frontal views here. Whereas if you go back up to the back towards the subject property and go to the west side of East Front Street, the house on the left in this image is the one next to the one on the corner with the wraparound porch. And then now you can see some of these a little bit better in a more frontal view as we continue down the street on the west side. And you can see these are all 2 stories, again, with porches, and sometimes 2.5 stories. Till you get down to King Street, finally see that one from the front in a decent, halfway decent picture. And so that pretty much was all of the photo context from the staff. The applicants also provided some photos. Here are the corner homes. I'm going to make these bigger because the photos are so much smaller. But, oops. There we go. So that's the one at the northwest corner. Northwest, yes. I'll move down to the next one. And now the southwest corner. So in this case, they're going counterclockwise direction. Much better photograph than the one that we provided. And again, a much better photograph than ours. The one on the southeast corner. Here you can see how high that foundation is, and it is 2.5 stories there. All right. Okay. And then some from East Front Street. They also provided similar images for these. So we have, I think this is the one next to the wraparound porch, to the north of the wraparound porch, then the next one after that. So we see a lot of pictures of 2.5 story homes with porches. 2 stories there, maybe 2.5, depending on what's on the gable end. 2.5 and 2.5. 2.5 there. And 2 stories. That one's also been elevated about 8 years ago, 6-8 years ago, I think. So gives you an idea as to the effects of elevation. Now going on the eastern side, farther up. So we started at King Street. I think we're going back towards the property. And here, yep, we're heading towards the property. And not a single one is the same as the other, right? Quite a variety. That one is the one immediately adjacent to the property. All right. So, and then they also show photos of one behind the property on Edgerton. And some of those other ones along Edgerton. Well, that's not really a house. Okay. Then they provide photos of the subject property. I think these might be a little bit bigger, so that's smaller. There we go. So this is the front door entrance on Johnson Street. And a close-up. Oh, wait. These are staff photos, sorry. Yes, from 2021, back when this project started, believe it or not. And so we have some photos from back then, and then the applicants also have a series of photos, so I'll kind of zip through some of these. We can refer to these if we need to. You can see some of the damage, say on the roof back here, is from when a tree fell off, very large tree fell on the house on this end of the house. Have a closer up view of some other damage from that. This is the actual from the corner of, well, inside the property at the corner of Johnson and East Front. So this is what would be the East Front Street, the current East Front Street facade. And then this is the Google Street View version of the left side or the north side of the East Front Street facade. You can't see it through the trees and shrubs, but you could see the garage. All right, so then some closer up details of some of the damage from that we documented in 2021. There's that main gable, and then here's the damage on the porch gable. Also some damage along the edges of the roof, and there are roof shingles missing if you don't happen to see them in the photographs. So this was all Florence damage. Now this may or may not have been Florence damage, but it's still bad condition for that window. This was the back of the garage, or is the back of the garage. So the current state of the home now from the applicant. That's bigger. All right, so that looks strangely, oh, no, that looks strange. Why is that?
That's the one from 2021 on Google Earth.
Is that actually, is this actually reversed?
No, that is from East Johnson Street.
Okay.
East Johnson Street. That is just the.
Because I don't see the light post and the shrubs growing on the light post on this side, and it looks like I see the street over here, but that,
No, this is the, if you pull it up on Google, this is what you'll get on Google. I was trying to reference.
wow.
That's
Okay.
what the status of the home
Okay,
was.
all right. So that's more like it is today, I think, where it's kind of overgrown at the entrance. And that's also the driveway, even more overgrown than before. And all of these, you can't even see the house. But when you get closer to view the damage and such on the house, these are some of the shots, I suppose, of that, right? So let's go to the next. This is the East Front Street facade. This is from the rear, looking at the rear of the garage on the right and the rear of the house on the left. And the front porch. And damaged gable, and now even more overgrowth taking over the house. Some closer ups of the back side of the house. And again, the back side of the garage. There's the screen porch, it was a screen porch, and the steps. And more images of the damage. And these also show some of the plants that are there as well. And of course the storage container in front of the garage. There's a garage door behind it. All right, so those are all the context photographs. And now this will be the surveyor's site plan, the latest rendition. So at the risk of getting too small, we'll just start with the bottom half here along East Front and Johnson. And this is the proposed footprint of the proposed house. The setbacks are set by the setbacks of all the other houses on the street. And so that's been documented here on the left-hand side of this table. They had to measure all of the setbacks all the way down East Front Street and down Johnson Street. And with those numbers, the setback on East Front Street can be anywhere between 18.9 feet, which is shown right here, and 34.1 feet from the back of the curb. We asked them to do the back of the curb because otherwise they would have to survey everybody's front property line. And that is not reasonable, so we use the back of the curb. Similarly, on Johnson, the minimum setback is 13.2 feet from the back of the curb, which actually isn't even on the property yet. And the maximum setback is 44 feet, shown by this dashed line here. You can see that the building is within that range, shown here in the survey, and out at East Front Street is at the maximum. So that's the setbacks. What also shows here is just the location of the additional pieces to the project. There's a handicap ramp on the north side, and this also shows the 6-foot setback, so it's going to be farther than 6 feet away, although it's not dimensioned. And then the only other thing left to discuss with this plan is a proposed 20 by 20 parking pad down here in the lower level in the back along Edgerton. So that would comply with the requirement for 2 parking spaces on site. All right. And just to note, you see that it's quite obvious. There's a gray area on this plan and there's a white area on the plan. Both areas represent the floodplain. The entire property is in the floodplain, but the white area actually has extra higher requirements because that's the limit of moderate wave action, which is waves of like 3 feet in height, up to 3 feet in height. And so that is what the Army Corps of Engineer has calculated to be the location for where it ends. So everything in the white area would have potentially at maximum storm, at flood storm height, waves of about 3 feet in height. In the gray area, not so much. So the construction requirements are less stringent in the gray area. All right. This is what's called the elevation certificate for the proposal. And what's to note here is that they are proposing a finished floor elevation of 12 feet above sea level, which is exactly what's required. The flood elevation, base flood elevation is 9 feet. The city has a 2-foot safety factor, so that would be 11 feet. And then it turns out that the ductwork and mechanical work has to be above that as well. So since most homes have all that underneath the first floor, we allow in the historic district we allow an extra foot for that. So 12 feet is the maximum and essentially the minimum. All right. They indicate here that the ground area around the house ranges from 7 feet, well, basically 7.1 feet above sea level to 7.8 feet above sea level. So we're talking about 5 feet between the ground and the floor level, which may look like 4 feet of foundation. All right, so we'll get to the proposed elevations here. Oops. All right. This was, let me check this real quick. Okay, These are, the bottom one is the front, proposed front elevation. And it's similar to the existing building in that the front is facing Johnson Street, and the stairs actually align with the walkway that's there. This has a porch on the front, and we'll see in the plan view that this is recessed in compared to this left facade. The foundation for the elevation is shown here as well. It's all brick, and it includes pilasters, and then also the flood vents at the bottom. All the materials of the columns and handrails are all wood. And let's see, the siding is all hardy board siding, and so is the trim. And that includes horizontal here on the main side, whereas the gables are shown with vertical siding. And there's some gable venting at the very tips of the tops of the gables. The roofing itself is composite, asphalt composite roofing. And I think the windows are all vinyl windows. I've forgotten, I guess. Is that correct? Yes, vinyl windows. In this case, they're paired up and separated with a large mullion in between them to imply the same thing as a historic window would have with the weights, space for the weights in between them. So we've asked them to provide that, and they have here. All the windows are vertical as required as well, or square as well. We can go to the rear view at this point, and you see the rear view has many of the same characteristics, except that the door on the left does have a small porch here, and there's a roof over it shown here. And then the handicap ramp comes all the way down the back. That's what this big long piece is here with all this handrail. They do have an outdoor closet with the doorway, which is poking above the ramp here. And they also even show the platform and the two mechanical units, and then the electrical and the gas meters and stuff over there. They do also have the same foundation all the way around, the brick foundation with the pilasters, and in this case they show the access door here. And I really can't see anything else that much different. You'll notice, though, for the ramp, the area under the ramp is enclosed with some slats, like this, horizontal slat work, or maybe boards, I should probably say, rather than slats sound a little flimsy. These are horizontal boards in order to enclose this space rather than have it just be open structure. All right, there is also a detail here on the left showing the detail for all the handrails such that it complies with the guidelines. So that the spindles or balusters are all centered underneath the handrail, the hand grip area, as well as the bottom rail. All right. So these are the same ones, I believe. Is that right, Mark?
Yes, it was, we were just showing, there was.
Oh, this shows the changes that they made.
If required,
Yeah.
just the.
Oh, I see. This is your alternate design.
It was the question that was raised about the storage of the home for
All right.
adjusting that to make.
The alternate design was for the front to include some windows in the gables to imply a 1.5 story structure. Some of the rest of these clouded items with clouds are some of the changes that they made since the last time, such as the corner trim is changed to 6-inch dimension. And I skipped over the rear because I thought there wasn't anything there other than the corner trim. It's the only thing you changed there. All right. So now we'll look at the two ends. This is the end facing Edgerton. So you can see the front steps going down on the left-hand side here, and now you can see, have an idea as to how deep the front porch is. And then on the facade facing Edgerton, there's 2 pairs of these double windows. And you can see they added this second pair since the last meeting. Nothing else is that significantly different. Oh, well, no, that's not. So this is actually on the right-hand side. This is the landing, the first landing for the ramp. Oh, I guess maybe, yes, I could point out, under the front steps, we did ask them to enclose that, and so they're also using those horizontal boards across there as well. All right, and then towards East Front Street, this would be the facade for that. We asked, and they have provided now 2 extra windows here on this facade. These 2 windows are for the bathroom, and let's see. Now you can see the platform for the HVAC unit also similarly has those horizontal boards to enclose the space under it. Yeah. You can see they are including gutters and downspouts. I didn't mention that earlier. So this is the floor plan, if we need to see that, which includes showing the ramp at the top. So East Front Street would be on the left, and Johnson at the bottom, Edgerton on the right. And so if we have any questions about why couldn't they put a window or whatever, we can look that up. They provided all the construction details. And if we want to look up those, we can look those up if you have any specific questions. We took care of the one about the handrails earlier. That's usually the one we need to see most often. These are the structural plans showing the framing and such, which is not exactly so relevant other than the foundation plan, perhaps. If anyone wants to see the foundation plan, we have that here as well. It shows also all the posts and such for the ramps and all the rest of the exterior construction. And in this case now, structural details. The trusses. This is the plumbing plan. This is the HVAC plan. And this is the electrical plan. All right. So they provided some images for for some of the parts of the project. So in this case, the roofing. Needs to be much bigger. That's good. There we go. Oops. So there's what the roofing's supposed to look like. It's this gray. It's a darker color, which is what's required. This is roofing too, right? Yes, this is still supposed to show us roofing. Looks like it was a frosty day. Okay, now we have something other than roofing. Siding. So this gives an idea what the siding will look like. Another view. And you can see it's the flat texture. In this case, it's not. This has the grain texture. And then for the windows, this is a shot of one of the window, or two of the windows, one in front of the other. And the doors. Front door. And the lighting. So, for the lights over at the doorways, they're proposing these lights here.
Good, because it's also got, we have discussed, it's got, it matches the same design with the post, so that they're gonna be all three the same texture. We could look at the other surrounding homes.
Okay, wait, stop. Please introduce yourself.
Mark Moore, we're representing Shepherd Response. These were just more present to a circular design. We compared it to some of the other homes up and down East Front Street. They had more of a globe appearance, so we went with this one to make sure we could match all three lights that we intend to install on the home. Because the street light at the front of the property, you'll see in another layout, it allowed us to make sure we keep the same lantern style at all three.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right, so now the decks, here we're showing some of the handrails from nearby. And there's a sample of the deck and that kind of under the enclosure underneath the deck that would be actually for the for the ramp, sorry. There's another view. Now, all of the exterior wood will be either stained, and they've proposed to paint everything, so there will be no exposed wood as is required. So one of the options for the foundation was to, the guidelines suggest either plantings, terracing, or grading, and so the applicants are showing some examples of actually the fact that the house already has a small amount of terracing with that garden wall at the front, or retaining wall at the front of the house along Johnson, and along Edgerton there's a large one. Whereas other places in the neighborhood have no terracing, but in this case has plantings as screening. And then here's that same house again from the front with the plantings as screening. So some other examples of foundations in the area showing the pilasters and the brick. So that's similar to what they're proposing. And then for the vents, this is an example of what they've done elsewhere for the vents. And this is elsewhere in the neighborhood. And then for the parking area, let's make this bigger because it's hard to see. Down in the lower right here is the proposed area for the parking. We'll see also later it's proposed to be a gravel parking with a brick outline. All right. And this is another view of the same area, which is at the other end of the screen of this grass area. Closer up view, that's more like the area there. And from the other view, same area. So, and once again, another one. There are steps currently going from that lower area to the upper area to get up the retaining wall there. Those are in disrepair. And I think this is the same one. 3 times. So, let's see. Okay, so now they have provided some landscaping plans. This one is basically a plant removal plan. So everything in red, not just solid red, but also outline red, is to be removed. So this is the existing residence, and that's the screen porch here. So all of these plants along this back side, or that side, and then along the front of the house will be removed all the way down the sidewalk. All of the shrubs along the perimeter will stay, and all of the street trees will stay. Let's see. And the dark ones represent trees, whereas the outline ones represent shrubs. Some are larger and some are smaller. And they've also indicated here the current distance from the residence to the back of the curb is 39 feet. That was a question that was raised in the last meeting. And here you can see more shrubs. Basically all the shrubs around the house will be removed. And these 1, 2, 3 trees on this side on this end of the house will be removed, but these 1, 2, 3, 4 trees will remain. The big Japanese cedar tree will remain, and I don't know what the other ones are. The magnolia tree will remain. The dogwood tree will remain, and this is actually an andina. That's a shrub that will remain as well. And again, the shrubs all the way around the perimeter are shown to remain. Let's see, the distance to the curb on this end is currently 46 feet, so that's the new house will be closer, is proposed to be closer than the current house to the street. All right, what else? That's the removal plan. Then these are the trees to be removed. If you want, we can go, we'll not make them so big. Take that time. Those are all the bushes and trees. We can go over that if you want. So now here's the plan for the new plantings. So in the back, you can see here is the loose stone gravel driveway with a brick paver soldier course border along the back. And it's within the property. It is 20 by 20 and then has a 20-foot wide driveway. Let's see. Then they're also proposing a new 5-foot wide by 9-foot long wood staircase to get up to the upper level. And there is a break in the shrubs at that point, which isn't shown on the drawing, but it does exist. And then there will be planting the items in the green squares. I don't know if you can see the green rectangles from your seats, but the green ones represent the trees that are going in. This one happens to be a white flowering dogwood. This one happens to be a Tonto crepe myrtle. Then on the right side, another Tonto crepe myrtle is this one, following to that corner of the house. Then next to the stairway is a weeping Yelpon holly. And I believe there's another one on the other side. Yes, another weeping Yelpon holly on the other side of the stairs. Then at the other front corner, this is a camellia here with a big black circle. And then all the rest are basically shrubs, as far as I can tell. And you can see now the lawn between the current shrubs and the house itself is quite a bit smaller. The landscaping area is to be bordered with brick paver edge border in the planting bed. And now the setback is shown here again as 34.1, just like the survey plan. All right. So these are the proposed plants, including their size in height and width at maturity. So if we need to refer to those, we can do that. but we also asked them to provide a drawing that shows the elevation, kind of represents the elevation of those trees and bush shrubs around the house. So this being the front, they're shown here. So I don't remember what it was here, but it was a larger tree that fit in this space here. Then there were 4 smaller shrubs, and then the 2 Yelpon hollies would be on the left and right of the stairway. And then at the back corner were the Tonto crepe myrtles, I believe, whatever, crepe myrtles on the corner here. And there were 3 more shrubs in between those as well. So that gives, and those arrows represent approximately the height of those shrubs and trees at maturity. And of course, nobody can be sure what they will turn out to be. Then, whereas on the back, which was above here, I'm going to go back up here. On the back, there are no plants and shrubs proposed because there is kind of a secondary parking area along between the ramp and the house, plus it is just a small amount of yard between the ramp and the shrubs on the north side. So, all right, let's look at the other 2 sides. Did I just go past them? Yes. No, that's the front. Sorry. The 2 ends. So this is the end facing Edgerton. There's the crepe myrtle on the corner, and then the 4 shrubs. And I forget what the smaller one was back here on the right in the back corner of the house there. And then on the East Front Street side was the larger one on the corner at the front corner. And then there were several, we would have to say, larger shrubs along this side as well. All right. Then this is the materials list, that the aforementioned materials list way back about, 20 minutes ago? Which lists all the various materials, including the architectural shingles, the fiber cement siding and trim, the windows, the doors, which are fiberglass, and then the foundation with its brick, and the vents, and the crawl space access door, and then the gutters, and then also the railing and deck and HVAC platform and ramp, all of that exterior woodwork, all treated lumber, painted white. The porches, description of some of the materials for the porch. The porches will be concrete floors. I'm sorry, the front one will be concrete floors, and the rear one will be lumber. And the parking area. So I highlighted in yellow the things that were new since the meeting last time. So they added that the wood would be primed and painted, not just painted, which is a requirement, and that the parking area will be lined with red brick to ensure retention of the material. Also required. So, and then there's a list of all the various trees that are removed, 5 trees removed, 5 trees replaced, all the shrubs that are removed, 32 of them, and they're planning to put in 33 shrubs, and then also they listed the perennials here. And also, once again, mentioned the red brick border around the home, and the water runoff from the downspouts is to be directed into the landscaping. So, and that is the proposal. There is potentially a counter proposal here by the owner that we can talk about if you want later. So that plus this is the zoning and inspections form. The zoning officer has determined it meets the requirements of the land use ordinance, but a zoning permit application is required, of course, for a new building. And the chief building inspector has indicated that a demolition, building, and floodplain development permits are required. So our staff report is ready whenever you are. Remember, we will end up doing this discussion in two parts. First, the discussion about the demolition of the house, whether it's appropriate or not. Then after you decide that one way or the other, if you decide it's not appropriate, then it's no point in going forward with the rest. But keep in mind, this is not a contributing structure. So we can proceed.
Okay.
Done.
So does that wrap you up?
Yep, for now.
Okay, Mark, it's been a while since we talked. Anything you would like to add that Matt hasn't covered?
No, I know we've just tried to make sure we've compared the structure and made those modifications to the original plan to make sure it meets the surrounding structure as best we can within the guidelines of the program that we're utilizing. So,
Very good. We appreciate that. So at this point, I will ask if there is anyone who has standing who would like to speak for or against the project. And
The demolition? Is that what you asked?
yeah, did you receive a written notice?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so could you please introduce yourself, give your address? Does everybody understand what standing means?
Yep.
It means you received a written notice from the city about this hearing.
Is this the demolition part or the redevelopment part?
It's all one proceeding.
Okay, I thought you said it had to be separate.
Well, they are, but once the train's leaving the station, and we'll follow our process after we get a comment from the public. Does it answer your question?
So I guess the confusion that maybe I've created is that their deliberation will be in two parts.
Yeah. So if you plan to speak, now is your chance, whether it be for the demolition or for the redevelopment.
Okay, all right. I'm Margaret Hicks. I live at 600 Edgerton, directly behind, and we did receive a letter from the HPC. And there are a few areas that I'd like to go over. The guideline 2.1.1-3. It says the application does not show the relationship between the placement of the structure and other structures on the block and the street. And then corner lots have two primary areas of visual concern, and the new structure does not address this. The proposed elevation on East Front Street is not appropriate for the primary area of visual concern. Also, guidelines for the fences and garden walls, 2.5.1-6. The elevation does not show the relationship between the existing garden wall, as shown on the site plan, and the relationship to the height of the new structure or the height above grade or to the surrounding structures. And then in terms of mass, scale, mass, and proportion, 3.1, the diminished scale of the existing structure is held by its placement on the elevated grade and surrounding garden wall and the mass of the brick masonry structure. Changing the material to wood siding has completely altered the mass and presence of the existing structure in a negative way. Whereas the existing structure has symmetry in the placement of the windows and the doors and roof lines, the proposed structure has none of these and is completely haphazard and irregular with seemingly no thought to their placement. In terms of form and rhythm, there is no thought to form and rhythm, and it is completely lacking in this new structure. The existing structure, while simple, has some very elegant and subtle detailing of the porch columns, cornice molding detailing, shuttered doors and windows, all of which are lacking on the proposed structure. Also, when it comes to demolition, I have a concern living behind. Prior to demolition, there appears to be, I walk past that home on a regular basis, there appears to be a large number of roaches in and around the property. There is prominent bats in the area. I don't know that this is coming from that home. Will there be an extermination or any type of pest removal done prior to the tear down? And then I have concerns with the large ramp on the side of the home. It's visible from East Front Street. I was wondering if this ramp is at the request of the homeowner, or is this a requirement of NC Rebuild? If it's a requirement of NC Rebuild, can an exception be made to not install a ramp, or can an elevator be installed in place of the ramp due to the location of this home being in the historical district? If it's not needed by the homeowner, does it truly need to be built, or can an elevator be put in? I noticed that they are removing the garage, but I don't see that they're rebuilding the garage. I don't know if that's required, but that's a concern I have. It has a garage, and they're not going to put it back. Also, there's a nice screened-in porch, or there was a nice screened-in porch that's being removed as well, and I don't see on the plans that they're going to be replacing that screened-in porch. And then lastly, the application is in the name of Mr. David French. The deed is in the name of a Mary Ann D. Williams Trust. I don't see any mention of the name of David French. Wondering, will this deed, or will there be documentation showing that Mr. French has the authority to make alterations to this property? And that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll do our best to address your concerns. You started off pretty well tying things to guidelines. Those are things that we talk about tonight. I'm going to leave it to my fellow commissioners when we get to discussion to bring up discussion that may or may not relate to what you've inquired. As for things like pest control and what are the grant requirements and the legal ownership of the property, we're going to assume that we have the correct legal ownership based on the affidavit we have on file. I trust council's antenna is up, and if something changes after the fact, we'll let you know. But as for all the other questions that have to do with the entity doing the construction and the design, which is a very unusual delivery process that apparently everybody is quite aware of by virtue of your appearance here, we have no purview over that. So what is in the application is what we will decide tonight, and we'll either approve it, deny it, or approve it with conditions.
Mr. Vice Chair, as the issue of ownership has been raised, it may be appropriate for the applicant or for Mr. French, if he is here, to address that issue just so that the record is clear.
Sure. David, you want to take a shot at that?
Sure. I'm David French, 104 Johnson Street.
Thank you.
I'm the beneficiary trustee of the Mary Ann D. Williams Trust. Certificate of trust was supplied to the city. Certificate of trust has been supplied to Rebuild years ago. That shows that I am the sole beneficiary of the trust. The house was conveyed into the trust in 2011. And so when Cousin Mary Ann passed away in 2022, I'm the beneficiary of the trust.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Council?
No.
Do you have any further? Okay, thank you, David. All right, so we were in the midst of public comment from those who have standing. Anyone else who has standing who would like to make a comment, either for or against? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Ann Shout, and I live at 201 Johnson Street, and it is a property with standing. We are within 100 feet. I am speaking for all of the contiguous neighbors that received the notice. tonight. As you know, this is 104 Johnson Street. It's a 1960s ranch-style one-story and is one of only two in the historic area.
Next. All right, thank you.
These are the other three houses at the intersection of Johnson and East Front Street. They reflect a mix of architectural styles ranging from the early 19th to the early 20th centuries. All of these houses are built from the finest materials and show superior construction. In fact, I think my house is the one the little pigs ran to get away from the wolf. You have 22-inch thick walls, you aren't going anywhere. 528 East Front Street is the Jarvis Jones house, circa 1810. According to Peter Sandbeck, it's one of the finest side hall plan dwellings constructed in New Bern during the prosperous federal period. It is 2.5 stories. 201 Johnson Street is the Charles Slover House from 1849. Again, according to Sandbeck, the house is New Bern's grandest Greek Revival-style residence and ranks among the finest houses of the period in the state. 202 Johnson Street is the Harvey B. Marks House, circa 1912. From Sandbeck again, designed by Herbert Woodley Simpson, the Harry B. Marks House combines the restrained use of colonial revival forms with a number of foursquare and early bungalow-style details. The house is again 2.5 stories. And our neighbors and I think that this is probably, if not the most, one of the two most important historically and architecturally intersections in the historic area.
I'm
These are
taking
the
it, this
other
is,
houses.
I'm sorry, this is your presentation that we're seeing?
Yes.
Is that what that is? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it looks strangely familiar, doesn't it?
No. I just
Realize-
didn't know if we were going back to look at the same ones, but
No,
this is yours.
These are all my photographs and
Okay.
everything.
Thank you.
Okay, these are the contiguous houses that received the notices that are in the downtown historic area. 604 is the Salter's store. It's from between 1800 and 1840. It is a 2-story. 605 East Front is the Gabriel Manigat Raines house from 1810. It is a 2.5-story house. 608 East Front is the John H. Crabtree house, circa 1885. It is a 2-story house. Then we go to Edgerton Drive. 600 Edgerton is the Charles Hicks house, circa 2021. It is one of the newest constructions in the downtown historic area and is an award-winning design in 2021. It is a 2-story house. 606 Edgerton is the Scott Griggs house, circa 1995. It is a 2-story house as well. As you can see, every house surrounding 104 Johnson is at least 2 stories high and reflects the best in New Bern's architecture through the years. Okay, Matt. Here's a picture of the proposed house for 104 Johnson Street. It is financed by HUD, as you know, and is designed that can be seen over and over again. It reflects the current trend in houses that are usually used by HUD to replace damaged homes. As you will note, it is a 1-story house. Matt. Thank you. This is a picture of the proposed house raised up. This is an idea of what you're going to see with a brick foundation when it is finished. Will this house blend in with the surrounding area and be congruous? Will it follow the HPC guidelines? Matt? Let's talk about guidelines for development pattern 2.1.1 and 2.1.3. Even though the extant house faces Johnson Street, in order to comply with 2.1.1, the house should be narrow and face East Front Street. Section 2.1.3, again, the proposed house is a 1-story house. There's not another 1-story house within 1 block of the property in any direction. On both of these sections, the proposed house is incongruous and should not be allowed. Matt, please. Determining if change is not incongruous. This is section 1.8. The proposed house violates both of the sentences that are arid and is incongruous in relationship to other structures, adjacent properties, the street, and the historic district. And it is also incongruous in mass, proportion, scale, and style for the proposed proposed for use. The next slide, please. This is section 3.3, scale, mass, proportion, and rhythm. Here the pictures really talk for me. The scale of the house is incongruous because it is a one-story house in the midst of the two-story houses. In mass, the house in the center is lower and wider, just as the proposed house is, and therefore is incongruous with the surrounding houses. In proportion, the house is a one-story among two-story or better houses and is not the same tall and narrow design of the immediate houses, so it is incongruous. And finally, rhythm. The house is not positioned on the lot in the same manner as many of the other houses are on East Front Street and Johnston, and is therefore incongruous. Matt, please. Lastly, I would like to talk about neighborhood concern about the incongruency of the proposed house. I think Krista and David Callender summed it up best. They wrote a statement. Is it permissible for me to read that?
No,
Mr. Chair.
Well,
unless they're present. Are they present?
Pardon?
Are they present?
No, they're on vacation.
No.
Can't do it.
They've given approval to provide this letter.
Well, we can't ask questions of a person who's not here. That's
Okay.
why they have to be present.
Anyway, all 8 of the surrounding neighbors are unalterably opposed to the house plan and have signed the drawing you sent out to show their solidarity. You will notice that everybody has signed it except for one person, and that's one of the ones that's on vacation. We all want Mr. French to have a house to fit his needs and be our neighbor. But we want the house to blend in with the surrounding houses and conform to all the guidelines of the HPC. Since the proposed house does not conform to the guidelines, we strongly ask that you deny the COA for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ann. So, do we have anyone else withstanding who would like to speak, and preferably speak about things that we have not already talked about?
I'm not quite as prepared as my lovely neighbors, but my name's Joanne McKee. I live at 604 East Front Street. So I have a wonderful bird's eye view of this house from my bedroom. I have 15 windows in my bedroom, and so when I look out, I see what needs to be torn down. So I don't know if these are two separate issues necessarily. If the house is not approved, if you will still approve the demolition, but I would love to beg for it to be torn down. There are squirrels, cats, rats, you name it, that are in that house that come into my yard. It's when you look at it from the top, you can see all the holes in the roof. You can just see the amount of damage. And to look out and see that, it's such a terrible eyesore. So I'd just like to address the fact that I hope that you will go ahead and approve tearing it down, even if you don't approve the house. If you do approve the house, whatever, it still needs to be torn down. It exceeds 75%, I think, is the rule for of the value of the house, the amount of damage. I was a general contractor. I still am. I'm still licensed. And I live next to this, and it's almost kind of funny when I look out and I see it, because I have this heart that wants to go over and fix it for David. I'd love to fix it for David. But, you guys have the power to at least tear it down and make that corner look presentable in New Bern. It is a beautiful street. We have a beautiful town, and if you could just at least approve that part to tear it down. So that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Joanne. Anyone else withstanding who has something new to share?
No, I just basically want to echo the two previous speakers.
Mr. Chair, if you could have this speaker indicate his name and address.
Terry King, 105 Queen Street.
And have you been sworn in?
What was that?
Have you been sworn in earlier?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And Mr.
So
Chair,
I'm
we can
2 blocks
verify
away.
whether this gentleman received a letter.
Oh, yeah. Did you receive a letter?
No, I did not.
Okay, so you don't have standing. And so if I could ask you to hold your thought till we take care of everybody with standing, and then you can come back. Thank you so much. All right, so again, anybody with standing, meaning you received a letter from the city of New Bern, who would like to speak?
come up?
You can't,
He got,
As it was mentioned, to tear the house down, the house has been established that it is not
well,
repairable?
we don't know yet. That's why we're here tonight.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
So, okay. So one more time. Anybody withstanding who would like to speak?
Again, good
Mr.
evening. I'm David French of 104 Johnson Street. As I said before, I'm here as a beneficiary trustee for my cousin Mary Ann D. Her trust, Mary Ann D. Williams Trust. In 2016, my dear cousin suffered a stroke, and I became her full-time 24/7 caregiver. In September 2018, which next month will be 6 years since Hurricane Florence hit New Bern and made her home uninhabitable. Next, but there were tens of thousands of people in eastern North Carolina who were made homeless by this storm. I've often said that I would gladly spend a month in the attic as we did that night and the next morning, and if I never had to see the lights of FEMA and Rebuild NC again after what my cousin and I have endured for so many years. As President Ronald Reagan once said, the scariest words in the English language, I'm with the government and I'm here to help. I've lived this right up there. Through the kindness and assistance of family, friends, and neighbors, we have made the best we could of a terrible situation over these past years. We thank and appreciate all of them. In early 2019, FEMA said that they were going to repair the home and that she would be back home by the end of the year. This proved to be untrue. In March 2020, COVID hit, and also the FEMA assistance for temporary housing came to an end. Our North Carolina elected officials at both the state and federal levels failed to request an extension of the emergency declaration for Hurricane Florence, even though tens of thousands of people in eastern North Carolina were still displaced. In December 2020, we made an application for the Rebuild NC program and were accepted in January 2021. The Rebuild NC program is administered under HUD via the NC Office of Recovery and Resiliency, which is controlled by Governor Cooper's office via Secretary Buffalo's Department of Safety and headed by Director Hogshead. It was our understanding that they were going to repair and possibly elevate the home and that we should be back in the home within about a year or so. They were informed that her home was in the New Bern Historic District and that guidelines must be followed. They've known about this since December of 2020. This began the cycle of please just give us 3 more months refrain. Our first program liaison was excellent in assisting us through the unbelievably and unnecessarily complicated rebuild process for which there are 8 steps. By the end of 2021, we were not back in my cousin's home, and rebuild did not even have all the necessary inspections completed. In January 2022, we were assigned to our second program liaison, and she also did an excellent job. But we soon learned that she and her company were being given false information from Rebuild NC, and that they were told to put people off and make up excuses. She told me that she would no longer lie for them. I said that we were tired of the continued delays, and that my cousin just really wanted to go back to her home, and that we were going to contact our elected officials as well as the media if something was not done. She asked to give her a month to try to get us more answers. I said, okay. We actually gave her 2 months or so. I know for a fact that she did all that she could, but she was hamstrung by Rebuild NC. In April 2022, I reached out to Steve Tyson, who was now our North Carolina State Representative, and he was very helpful in navigating the state bureaucracy. In 2018, when Florence hit, Steve Tyson became the leader of the recovery effort here in New Bern and Craven County. He went above and beyond the call of duty, and we all owe him a huge debt of thanks and gratitude. Over these years of dealing with Rebuild NC, we could not have made it this far without him, his legislative staff, and associates. In May 2022, Lisa Sorg, S-O-R-G, an investigative journalist formerly with NCNewsline.com, published her first article about the failure of the leadership of the Rebuild NC program and the plight of thousands of people still not back in their homes, some since 2016 when Hurricane Matthew hit, and with many still living in mold-infested homes and others in hotels for years, where they were often locked out and or evicted due to Rebuild not paying the hotel bills on time. She is the one to be given credit for exposing the incompetence, the mismanagement, and negligence of Cooper, Buffalo, Hogshead, Stein, and their cohorts. Her unbiased reporting led to the NC state legislature to conduct the first hearing about Rebuild NC in September 2022. Due to my cousin's condition, we were not able to attend, but we submitted a statement on what we had endured. The in-person televised testimony from the folks who had suffered so was heart-wrenching, to say the least. In September 22 hearing began the very slow process of changing some things, but the NC state legislature was hamstrung by Cooper, since it all falls under his purview. Later, Cooper even walked out of a TV interview with WRAL when questioned about the Rebuild debacle. As Lisa Sword once told me, she has never been so disappointed with Cooper's lack of response to the plight of the Hurricane Matthew and Florence survivors. In October 2022, very sadly, my dear beloved cousin, Marianne, passed away. She was a stroke and Hurricane Florence flood survivor who sadly was never able to return to her beloved home due solely to the incompetence, the mismanagement, and the negligence of Encore Rebuild NC under the bureaucratic thuggery of Cooper, Buffalo, Hogshead, Stein, and their cohorts. In December 2022, after writing yet another email to Rebuild NC, elected officials, and Lisa Sword, we were finally assigned our 5th project liaison. I was finally contacted by Mr. Arlen with Rebuild NC, who was Hogshead's right man at the time. He said that he was going to make sure that our application moved forward. By this time, Rebuild NC had determined that it was better to tear down homes and build new ones instead of repairing and elevating the damaged homes. Rebuild only had one floor plan, the O'Neill, that would fit on the lot and was about the same square footage as Cousin Marianne's home. He was informed at the time that the home was in the New Bern Historic District and that the guidelines must be followed. He said they would adhere to all local, state, and federal guidelines. In about January of 2023, after having the O'Neill plans evaluated by a friend who served on the first New Bern HPC and also an architect friend, there were some obvious issues with the design. These were communicated to Mr. Arlen with Rebuild NC, and he said that no changes would be made unless the New Bern HPC voted the plan down in an official public meeting. Rebuild was again given the link to the New Bern HPC guidelines. In the spring of 2023, Rebuild sent Mr. Trumper and Mr. Tellup, their surveyor, to meet with the City of New Bern Developmental Services about our home. I was neither informed or invited to this meeting and a walk around of the home. I only found out about it months later by accident when I was informed that the gist of the meeting was that they had determined that it was going to cost Rebuild a great deal of money and they were trying to figure a way out to get out of it. Also, some of the O'Neills were beginning to be built, and it was very obvious from the photos that the design of the home would not fit into the New Bern Historic District. In late April and early May of 2023, I was informed that if I did not sign the Rebuild NC award agreement that I knew had false info in it, that I would be kicked out of the program and also be made homeless. With the advice of my elected officials and others, I signed the document as I had no choice. In July 2023, there were numerous issues with determining the setbacks of the home. Rebuild refused to believe that the setbacks were as stated the previous year in an email from the City of New Bern. Unbeknownst to me, the City of New Bern changed how they determined setbacks in August 2023. I was never informed until much later. In late November 2023, I was finally assigned a general contractor, Shepherd's Response, a Florida-based company who now has offices near Raleigh. I spoke with Mr. Moore, the general contractor with Shepherd's Response, and informed him about the New Bern HPC guidelines. He said he has years of pulling permits and it would be no problem. He was given a link to the New Bern HPC guidelines. I told him, you have no idea what you're stepping into. In early December 2023, we had a pre-construction walkthrough with another rep from Shepherd's Response and a young man from Rebuild NC. The Shepherd's Response man said that he saw this to be a build-to-site project. I asked what this meant, and he said that it would be an appropriate home built for the neighbor that's not in their current repertoire of homes. In December 2023, I requested the full pre-construction report from Shepherd's Response, and they refused to send it to me. The young guy from Rebuild did send me his report, but it was full of incorrect information. In January 2024, I was informed that if I did not sign the Rebuild pre-construction report, even though it's full of incorrect information, I would be, for the second time, I would be kicked out of the program and been made homeless. With advice of my elected officials and others, I had to sign it. I had no choice. Over the next months, I tried to repeatedly to convey to Shepherd's Response and Rebuild NC my concerns, but they fell on deaf and dumb ears. This is one of the main problems with the Rebuild NC project. They do not include or listen to the homeowners. This is not an isolated case. We've got 2 Facebook support groups for people who are survivors of the Rebuild debacle. As expected, Rebuild NC did not have their act together, and it took them 4 months to be able to attend the New Bern HPC design review in May of 2024. And they have attended a total of 3 design review meetings in total. At every meeting, I have said that this home design is inappropriate for the New Bern Historic District neighborhood. As I have said throughout this very long process, this home needs to be designed by a local New Bern architect and built by a local New Bern builder. I desire to have a home that I like, my neighbors like, and that adds to the wonderful charm and character of the historic district in which my family has lived for over 300 years. Thank you. And I'd like to, I don't know if y'all can see this, but this says, if the government had a sandwich making program, this is how the sandwich would look.
So David, before you get away from me,
Yes, sir.
for the record, do you want me to proceed with hearing this application?
Yes, I'm over the barrel. I have no choice.
That's all I'm asking.
Yes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So David just gave a very lengthy background about the history of this project, which coincidentally has no bearing on guidelines. So I'm going to ask one more time, is there anybody withstanding who has something to say that we haven't heard that is tied to the guidelines? Mark? So everybody withstanding has spoken. Okay, Mark, you've heard a bunch of feedback from people withstanding, and I'll just give you a chance to address if you care.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kane.
We're getting back to Mr. Kane.
I'll keep, again, Mark Moore with Shepherd Response. Regarding the NC Rebuild program, it did have a state review of the program, and there has been many changes to the program.
Mark, I don't care.
We are completely going to apply by all codes and guidelines associated with the HPC. We have been in contact with Matthew to work the original plan to make sure we met according setbacks with everything. So the home, as addressed of how the home will sit in accordance with setbacks related to other homes, the height required by the county, the code, we are going to make sure we meet that requirement. And we did spend a lot of time to make sure we made sure to get the texturing and landscaping requirements in the home to make sure that's covered. With one comment, we just didn't have a response. We did recognize that the surrounding homes are mainly 2-story, 2.5-story. Again, that was that covenant picture we did. If there is a request to move, if it is approved to build this structure on there, again, adding the windows on the end to get that 1.5-story. per there, the current property was a one-story property, so that's why that he was, Mr. French was awarded a one-story property. The rebuild program felt that that was in accordance to return the same type of structure that was on that footprint of the home, and also to make sure with associating to 2.1.1, any change in the width and depth of the structure. That's why the new floor plan that was picked made sure, because this property is different to most of other structures because it is a corner lot, which covers the entire corner from East Front Street, Johnson Street, and Edgerton. So that is why it wasn't initially determined and changing it to a two-story, but keeping the same square footage per the HUD requirements. What was awarded in the program would change those dimensions of the home to be smaller or width in that. Relation to just the ramp question, it was requested by the homeowner. And we made sure to meet the code requirements because it is a corner lot. It is on the back of the structure, which is the requirement for code, but it is the corner lot with East Front Street and Johnson Street, so it's hard to meet the same things with other competing structures because they do have surrounding structures to block that view, but it does meet the requirement to be in the back of the home. On just that one comment. Just a comment, we will do an assessment after, if it is approved to demolish the home, we will do a reassessment. If there's a requirement to do any sort of health concerns of the home, we'll make sure to take a look at that. If there is a, we don't want to, when we demolish the home, if it is infested with other things, to make sure it's safe for the surrounding areas, because it is so close to that, we will make an assessment at that time.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so at this point, is there anybody who would like to speak for or against the application? And so I believe it was Mr. Kane, was it? And I appreciate your patience, but, if I stray from my routine, I get lost.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, just so that the record is clear, this gentleman did not receive a letter, so he will need to make some demonstration about how he will be impacted by this project different than members of the community at large.
Okay.
Well, as far as being impacted, East Front Street is full of old historic homes. This design does not fit. But in the big picture of things, the government basically, to get him back in the house, he's got to have that design. I don't like it either, but yeah, it impacts me because I would like to have nice historic homes similar to what's there now, but he didn't have a choice. So.
And did we get your address?
105 Queen Street.
Yeah, great.
So what was that?
105.
105 Queen Street. It's 2 blocks.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else? David, you've had your choice.
I have one other call.
Okay, here's the rules. You're in the non-standing zone now. We need to talk about guidelines.
Yes, right.
And we need to talk about things we haven't talked about prior to now. Okay.
I want to talk about demolition. It's my understanding from Matt that a certificate of demolition will not be issued until another home COA has been approved. Is that correct?
We can't tell you that right now because we can't get to our hearing to make that decision.
No, but I mean, that's what the guidelines say.
That's not what they say. They say it may be the case, but it may not be the case, and we'll determine that through the process of our hearing.
So during the hearing, does anyone have a time to speak if y'all bring up more questions?
And this is your time to speak if you're going to speak.
I oppose the demolition until there's a COA for the new house to be there. I agree with my neighbors. Okay. Something needs to be done. But a new house, my understanding, the city does not want open space places.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that under advisement. Okay, anyone else who would like to speak either for or against the application? Are we ready? Have we gotten to that point? This is your last chance to speak. There will be no other opportunities. Speak now. Corinne, you look like you're itching to come up here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
You sure? I mean, this is your last opportunity. Okay, anybody else? You positive you don't have anything you need to contribute? Okay. And so with that, I guess, Martin, you get one last chance to offer any information or rebuttal to the folks who have offered information to you and us.
So I'm going to speak a little bit. So just as a contractor working in the area, we've built several homes. I know this is a historic district, but it is does have the opportunity to build new homes. We feel that we do build very good quality, safe, sanitary, and decent homes from this program. A lot of our homes, homeowners that very greatly appreciate those homes. We are going to make sure to meet all the requirements. There was mention of we will use the concrete siding. It's not wood siding. We will meet all the requirements based on the historical district and requirements. We feel we do make a very good and safe and decent home that we like enjoying, and all our homeowners have greatly appreciated, and their neighbors as well, and the other counties that we have worked in North Carolina. So.
All right, very good. Stand by. We'll be back to you in a little bit. So if we've got no more public comment, I think we may very well be ready for a staff assessment.
Okay. All right, so let's go ahead. I'll make this large enough for people to read. Ooh, that's a little too large. Okay. This is the staff report for the applicants, David French for Williams Trust, the owners, and Shepherd Response for Rebuild NC. The applicant address is for Shepherd Response is 401 East Main Street, Suite 200 in Clayton, North Carolina. The project address is 104 Johnson Street in New Bern. And there is no historic property name because the status of this one is it is a non-contributing resource in the historic district. The National Register New Bern Historic District inventory description is therefore not available or not applicable, and Sandbeck has no description of the house either. So 104 Johnson Street. The project is to include the demolition of the one-story non-contributing house and garage and redevelopment with a one-story infill house. Staff submits the following excerpts from the Historic District Principles and Design Standards, aka guidelines, are appropriate to this application, the process for which consists of two deliberations, demolition and redevelopment. So starting with deliberation 1 for demolition. The guidelines for demolition are 6.4.1, the demolition of a non-contributing structure shall not be denied by the HPC. 6.4.3, the HPC reserves the right to postpone demolition until development and building permits are approved for redevelopment plans. 6.4.4, prepare drawings and photographically document the site prior to demolition, include photographs of interiors, exteriors, architectural elements, and context within the streetscape. 6.4.5, notify preservation organizations and allow for the salvage of design components, architectural features, and building materials for reuse. In addition, the guidelines stipulate, quote, in rendering a decision on a demolition COA, the HPC should address the following 3 considerations. Consideration 1, and they each have sub-questions to be answered. Consideration 1 is to address the historical, cultural, and architectural significance of the structure. Is it a contributing structure? Staff says no. The 2003 National Register inventory indicates the structure is non-contributing. Second, is it significant because of its historic use, an event, a person, a builder, or an architect? Staff says no, there is no indication of such significance. 3, is it the last or oldest example of a certain building type? Staff, there are still many, many ranch-style houses from circa 1980 or 60 in the city, county, state, and the country. So consideration 2, address the integrity of the structure. What are the conditions of foundations, floors, walls, windows, doors, and roofs? Staff, while there are several relatively minor exterior problems, the Building Inspections Division has indicated to HPC staff that the interior has been uninhabitable and abandoned for over 5 years due to the damages incurred from Hurricane Florence. Second question is it a hazard to public health, safety, and welfare? And staff has indicated that this building has been secured. For consideration 3, to address attempted preservation efforts, have options for rehabilitation been explored with preservation organizations? For staff says not to the knowledge of the staff. Has the applicant been unsuccessful in seeking alternatives to demolition? Not to the knowledge of the staff. Have alternatives for structure relocation and sale of the property been pursued? Staff also answered not to the knowledge of the staff. So for the deliberation only on the demolition of the house and garage, the statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is a proposal to demolish a non-contributing home and garage in the National Register Historic District and in the New Bern Local Historic District. 2, the HPC may not deny an application to demolish a non-contributing structure. 3, the flooding of Hurricane Florence in 2018 and subsequent vacancy has made the building unfit for habitation. 4, the house and the garage are not particularly unique or significant as a historic resource. 5, there are no special features of the house nor the garage that should be preserved. 6, the proposed redevelopment for the site will need to be approved by the HPC in deliberation 2 before a COA and a construction permit may be issued. And 7, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. So the HPC shall deliberate on this first segment of the process before proceeding to deliberation 2. The HPC may want to consider the following conditions. 1, revised plans according to the changes agreed upon at the hearing shall be submitted by the applicant to the HPC staff for approval according to the guidelines and prior to the final inspection by the Building Inspections Division. 2, the demolition shall be postponed until development and building permits are approved for redevelopment plans. And 3, due to the non-contributing status, the HPC determines the requirements to document the site and contact preservation organizations are unnecessary. Those are potential conditions for the approval. So the HPC should now discuss the demolition and vote on it before continuing to the next deliberation.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, before we get started, as we know, we've seen this at design review many times. Matt has given us an overview, and what I want to remind you is I understand that our process we're using is for a contributing structure, and this is not a contributing structure. We're just using that framework to keep us organized and come to a decision as we normally would in such a situation. So I expect a lot of the parameters that we're asked to deliberate don't apply, and feel free to contribute to the conversation if you see instances of such. And then also, again, this is our 2-step review process, so we'll discuss demolition, we'll come to some conclusion, and depending on that conclusion, we'll determine whether we go to redevelopment or to the next application. Okay, anybody have any questions about, commissioners, about how we're going to meander through this? We all good? So with that said, I'm going to suggest there are 3 considerations for evaluation. Let's deal with consideration 2 first, which talks about the structure of the property. So do I have a commissioner who cares to comment or ask a question?
On consideration 2?
Yeah, the integrity of the structure.
Well, I think it's been stated pretty clearly that it's sat empty since Florence, so it's not habitable. What I'm looking at, just to cut to the chase here, is guideline 6.4.1 says, we cannot deny a non-contributing structure, which is what this is. It has even if it was documented somewhere, which is not, that it has no historical, cultural, or architectural significance. That's what it really comes down to. Whether it's habitable or not, I don't think is relevant here just because it's a non-contributing structure. And we have clear evidence that it is not a non-contributing structure. It's not on the downtown inventory. There's no description in the historic architecture of New Bern and Craven County. It's not individually listed on the National Register. So the integrity of the structure, I think, is somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah. As so often, I fully agree with Mr. Thompson. I think this is the right statement, and the guidelines clearly show that we have no way to deny the demolition of the building.
Well, let me ask the other question. Is there a commissioner opinion that the building is repairable? I'm hearing none.
After being dunked and sitting for 5 years.
I'm just checking the boxes. I'm not necessarily advocating for one position or the other. But
Related to that issue, since we cannot deny demolition, can we therefore require the redevelopment plan to be approved? I'm not sure we can. It would seem to me it's up to the homeowner.
Well, again, I'd just like to use that process because that's what we're familiar with.
I'm just saying, I'm not sure, to the earlier question, since we can't deny demolition, can we tie it to redevelopment?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so either.
I don't see that either.
And I'm not saying that we're requiring it to be demolished today, but it would be up to the owner, correct?
I understood, and that's something this body has to determine whether they feel strongly enough to tie it. I, for one, do not feel strongly enough to tie it. It's pretty obvious to me that the building's in disrepair. And obviously George Washington did not sleep there. And it is not an example of a high style of architecture. So regardless of how you come to your
I looked at
decision,
all the
that's how I come to
Sanborn
mine.
maps going back, and it's never been a building there until this,
Right.
that I could tell.
All right.
Do we need a
Mr. Chair.
COA at all if we cannot deny the demolition?
Say again.
Do we need a COA at all if we cannot deny the demolition anyway?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mike.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I had a question. You said that you wanted to use the framework of a contributing just to kind of keep some order, but is that really, though, appropriate if it is a non-contributing? I know you're trying just to kind of keep some organizational on that, but I kind of agree with some other people that.
Well, we can deviate from that.
I think
if
the
you wish.
opportunity would have been if someone had particular historical, architectural significance that we weren't aware of, perhaps we could have considered that, but there isn't.
Okay. So where do we want to go? Give me a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the demolition of the structures at 104 Johnson Street in accordance with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15-411 to 15-429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on these specific guidelines and findings of fact. 6.4.1. This is a non-contributing structure, and we cannot deny demolition of a non-contributing structure. 6.4.3. We have the right to postpone demolition until an appropriate development plan is presented. Under considerations for evaluation, I think we've determined that none of these considerations really apply. We've determined that this property, this structure, has no historical, cultural, architectural significance. So under findings of fact, again, let me state, this is not a contributing structure, no reference in Sandbeck's book. It's not individually listed on the National Register. It's not documented as part of the historic district inventory, the downtown historic district inventory. the building is not habitable, and the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed the information and determined that the building is not habitable.
Second.
Got a motion and we've got
Hold
a
on.
Couple of seconds.
I'd like to also add a condition that we will allow the demolition to proceed once we have a redevelopment plan that's been approved.
Okay.
I
Richard?
withdraw my second, based
Okay.
on the condition. I think the condition is inappropriate.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't second with that condition.
I'm sorry?
I would not second with that condition. Because
Okay, then may I withdraw the condition?
Second.
Your motion.
Second. You can blame me on that.
Okay, so
It's been moved and
everybody
seconded.
clear what we've got? We've moved and second. Everybody clear what the motion is? And my only suggestion is I think you referenced 6.4.3 as one of your guidelines, which you probably want to delete at this point based on your revision. Is that correct? And am I tracking?
Let me ask this. Do we want, we've encountered this before, where what's the definition of a redevelopment plan?
You're on the right track before you went down that path.
Yes. If you just grade the lot, if that's the requirement, clear and grade the lot.
Again, we're
So,
going to handle this as a two-step process, so,
but
already
we're going
committed
to
there.
approve something with potentially not having a redevelopment plan, even that's grading the lot.
Yeah, potentially.
Everyone's okay with that.
That is a
Okay.
fact. That could happen.
Well, we don't know for sure, but that's the motion on the floor.
So again,
Are you removing that 6.4.3 from your motion?
If that's necessary for us to make some progress here, yes.
okay, so we have a revised motion and a revised second. Do all the commissioners understand what's on the table?
Yes, sir.
Is there any further discussion about the revised motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So there's part one.
Good job.
Are we ready to take up part two on the redevelopment?
Yep.
I would encourage us to do so.
Okay, so you would
do-
like me to continue with my staff report
If you would,
for
please.
deliberation two. Staff submits the following historic district guidelines are appropriate to this portion of the application based on the plans and descriptions provided at the time of the preparation of these recommendations. Points of HPC policy. The policies and rules of procedure adopted by the HPC for evaluating a redevelopment plan subsequent to a demolition include only 2 sentences. Any new construction proposed for the site will be evaluated based on historic guidelines for infill construction. And secondly, a redevelopment plan must include the following items as conditions for approval of the redevelopment plan: a review and preliminary approval by the chief building inspector, and a reasonable time frame for completion of redevelopment. So the chief building inspector and the zoning administrator have reviewed the proposed sketches and they have commented accordingly, and a time frame for completion of the project has not yet been proposed. Staff submits the following principles and design standards, guidelines that may be appropriate to this application. So in section 2.1 development pattern, these would be the principles. Project planning considerations. Development patterns have been in existence far longer than zoning, and existing buildings establish an understandable rhythm along the streetscape without historical regard for land use. The historic districts in New Bern have 3 types of development patterns, each of which is a record of a particular era in urban development and evolution. And one of those is the tight weave pattern, which is the one that applies at this location. I won't read that entire thing there. Hopefully you have done so prior to the meeting. And another important aspect of the development patterns is the placement of structures. So we have that presented there as well. So I'll advance now down to the development pattern standards. 2.1.1, to maintain the established development pattern for placement of infill construction. The relationship of a structure to the property boundary should be similar to those up the street, down the street, and in most cases across the street. And 2.1.3, the footprint, scale, and proportion of infill construction shall be in keeping with neighboring properties. In general, it is not appropriate to construct a 3-story structure in an area that is dominated by 1 structures. For utilities, we have 2.3.1, 2.3.2, 2.3.3, and 2.3.6. For landscaping standards, we have 2.4.1, 2.4.2, 2.4.3, and 2.4.4. For fences and garden wall standards, we have 2.5.5. For parking standards, we have 2.7.4. So then in the next section on design attributes, I will just read the highlighted portion here. Modifications, additions, and infill construction shall complement the scale, pattern, materials, proportion, and mass of surrounding historic architectural resources. And then under 3.1, the design principles includes scale, mass, and proportion. Again, I'll read the highlighted portion. Overall scale compares building form to that of nearby buildings, structures, and open spaces. Construction that ignores scale disrupts the harmony of the streetscape. There is also the differentiation with what is mass as compared to scale, and that has to do with the 3-dimensional aspect of project. Proportion is also mentioned here as well and defined. Then 2 paragraphs later, buildings in any given development pattern are generally similar in scale and mass, and facade proportions have a strong vertical orientation. Infill construction should respect these characteristics. And then lastly, another paragraph in that section is within the tight weave development pattern, buildings are traditionally 2 stories in height with sloped roofs. Facades are typically organized in a series of bays, deriving their character from articulated front porches, entry doors, and window configurations. Another section in this portion here is texture, where it adds additions, and infill construction should provide a degree of texture similar to surrounding buildings. For details, there is a little description there, and then it ends with, however, it is recommended that additions and infill construction reflect and reinterpret traditional building detailing. So the specific standards for design principles are 3.1.1, 3.1.2, and 3.1.4. Then in the portion on infill construction, 3.4, the principles are indicated there with the highlighted area says they are to be appropriately proportioned. But it should start at the first sentence there. Contemporary materials may be used on infill construction. They are to be appropriately proportioned, used in traditional ways, and installed in a traditional manner. And so the actual standards that apply here would be 3.4.2, 3.4.3, and 3.4.4. Section on design components for foundation standards. We have 4.1.2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. For walls, trim, and ornamentation standards, 4.2.4. For windows, doors, and openings standards, we have 4.3.2 and 3. For entrances standards, we have 4.4.4. For accessibility and life safety standards, such as the ramp, 4.7.2 and 3. For masonry standards, 5.1.5. For paint, 5.4.2, 3, and 4. And for contemporary materials, 5.5.1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. So the statements of fact based on the information contained in the application are: 1, the proposed structure is located in the tight weave development pattern. The project includes a proposal for redevelopment after demolition with a 1-story infill house. And 3, the zoning administrator and the chief building inspector have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. After deliberation, the HPC should include a version of these statements, one or the other. The proposed design components and materials does or does not meet the requirements of the Historic District Principles and Design Standards, aka guidelines. If the statement is that it does not meet the requirements of the guidelines, it must be stated how it does not, with reference to the text of the guidelines and or the specific standards. And then 5, the application is or is not incongruous with the guidelines. You will have to include those in some form or another. The HPC may want to consider the following conditions. 1, 2, and 3, revised plans according to the changes agreed upon at the hearing shall be submitted by the applicant to the HPC staff for approval according to the guidelines and prior to the final inspection by the Building Inspections Division. 2, as required by HPC policy, a review and preliminary approval by the Chief Building Inspector shall be a condition of approval. And 3, as required by HPC policy, a reasonable time frame for completion of redevelopment shall be established as a condition of approval. So the HPC shall deliberate on this segment of the process, then vote on the redevelopment. If warranted, the hearing can be continued to a future HPC regular meeting. If both the demolition and the redevelopment have been approved, another vote is taken as to whether to issue the COA for both decisions. That's the end of our staff report.
Okay, thank you. All right, commissioners, we've got a proposed construction. Let's talk about site and setting. Any comments about development pattern?
Well, it doesn't meet the tight weave requirements of the existing houses. It's a non-conforming property, so does it have to abide by the weave or the texture? I think it does.
Well, I think the definition of the tight weave development pattern is simply that you've got buildings that are take up a majority of the lot they sit on, and they have side yards, backyards, and front yards.
And a strong vertical orientation.
Sure. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at 2.1.3, and it says it is not appropriate to construct a 3-story structure in an area that is dominated by 1-story structures. And I would say conversely, that it is not appropriate to construct a 1-story structure in an area that is dominated by 2-story structures. And I think on that alone, that's sufficient to deny this application.
Okay, any other thoughts?
Well, to that point, if you go up and down the street, take 5 houses each direction, I came up with 15 3 or 2.5 story and 13 2-stories, and so clearly the predominant structure is 2-story or greater. And I don't see this being a 1-story house matching that scale proportion, and it doesn't meet the the drawing was pointed out, the mass, a lower 1-story versus 2-story vertical orientation. And yes, in the definite or the write-up of tight weave, it does specifically say, excuse me, I've got too many notes, but Ms. Schouts was so good I don't have to read all of it. Within the tight weave development pattern, buildings are traditionally 2 stories in height with sloped roofs, and that certainly is what's going on. I did ask in design review if there was a consideration for a 2-story house, and the answer simply is this is what Mr. French qualifies for. And so,
I will say that I asked in design review what it would take to get a 2-story house, and Mr. Moore said very clearly that we would have to deny it in a meeting like this in order for them to consider a 2-story, and I think that's exactly what we need to do.
So I think we have 2 similar opinions. Are there any other commissioner opinions that we
I
want
do
to
share the opinions voiced out by the other commissioners.
3 similar opinions. Are we ready for a motion, or do I need to keep polling people to see if
I
someone
have
thinks different?
a motion, if you want.
And Mr. Chair, just to be sure, if you all are satisfied that this is the greatest deficiency and you're willing to hang your decision on these particular guideline premises alone, you can do that. If there are other deficiencies in the application, I don't know if you want to explore identifying those for the purposes of the record.
Okay.
Okay, I'll continue.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood your comment, Counselor.
If you find, based on the evidence presented, that a denial is warranted for failure to satisfy guideline 2.1.3 and the description of tight weave development, that may be sufficient. However, if there are other deficiencies in the application, it may be worthwhile for purposes of the record to identify those deficiencies.
I see. Thank you.
I can continue on with no summary, if you like.
Please.
Page 3.1 of proportion, buildings in any given development pattern are generally similar in scales and mass and facade proportions and have a strong vertical orientation. Infill construction should respect these characteristics. I read the one about tight weave having traditionally 2 stories of height. Page 3-2, form and rhythm refer to the regular or harmonious recurrence of line shapes and forms. And roof form and pitch and the ratio of solids to voids in a wall plane. There's still a pretty big wall, blank wall on the front of the building.
On Front Street.
And the only concession to that was we'll put a tree there. Well, I don't think in other cases where we've had something that was not within the guidelines, we decided we could put a tree in front of it to hide it.
Here.
So then I mentioned the drawing for mass. 3.1.2 says avoid large expanses of blank walls. And page 3-6, infill, evaluate the context and sensitivity of the immediate area and shape infill construction to positively impact the overall district. So that's some additional points that are in the guidelines.
Okay. Do we have other comments to contribute on that or to continue on that line of thought?
I think that's sufficient.
Okay, just to make sure, do we have any thought that is contrary to that line? Okay, so then I think we're ready for a motion.
Wrote one down. I move to find the application for redevelopment of 104 Johnson Street to be incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, sections 15.411 to 429, and New Bern's Historic District guidelines based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. 2.1.3, guidelines for development pattern. Do I need to expand what's in there or not?
I think you can just reference the
Okay.
numbers.
3.1.1, design principles. 3.1.2, further design principles, blank walls. 3.4.1, infill construction. And findings of fact, the proposed project is in the tight weave development pattern. The project is in the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. The project is infill construction. The proposed project design does not meet the requirements of the Historic District Design Standards, also known as guidelines. The zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly, and the project is incongruous with the guidelines.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and so I think that being a denial ends our deliberation on this matter. And Matt will be in contact with the applicant's representative, and we'll work a path forward from there.
And Mr. Chair, just so that all the commissioners are aware, your rules of procedure indicate that no demolition can take place unless and until a redevelopment plan is approved.
Counselor, I don't know that says that.
I don't think it says, it says may.
I'm talking about your rules of procedure on page 18 of 24, under general principles. If you look at the last paragraph under general principles, it indicates. No demolition can take place unless and until a redevelopment plan is approved. Your guidelines allow you to delay demolition until development permits are approved. And there's a difference. There's a
Sure,
distinction.
well, there is, and that's what it is.
Just want to make sure everybody's aware.
Yeah.
Which was the basis of my condition.
Yeah.
All right, so are we ready to move on?
Yes, yes. So you do not need a motion for a COA.
That is
It will
correct.
only happen later.
That is correct.
Oh,
Okay.
Who was the wait, Greg? Were you the second?
No,
I did.
I think it was Mike.
Oh,
Mike. Okay.
All right. So, item C, 104 Johnson.
I'm sorry, before
No,
we
we
go on,
just did-
Counselor, what was, I'm looking at the guidelines, but
She's-
which policy or which procedure were you
The,
looking at?
I'm referencing the HPC rules of procedures,
Rules of
Okay.
procedure.
which is not, it's a separate
Yeah,
document, the
yeah,
guidelines.
right. But I didn't get the number on it. Yeah, I have it right
If you
here.
reference page 18 of 24, there is a subsection there called general principles.
Okay,
And I was
thanks.
referencing the last paragraph.
Okay, I was trying to catch it and I didn't grab it.
And-
Yes, sir.
and
Yes.
remember, a redevelopment plan does not necessarily mean that a structure has to be built, because we've encountered this before. A redevelopment plan might be, I'm gonna scrape the lot and then level it and plant grass. That
But
could
that
be a
wasn't the
redevelopment
application.
plan. Yes,
But that wasn't the application.
correct.
Yeah.
Excuse me, Counselor, also though, isn't that for a contributing structure?
No, sir.
Doesn't
For,
matter.
under general principles, it says two necessary before an owner can demolish a contributing structure.
Yes, sir, and it identifies those two conditions. The subsequent paragraphs are not tied to any reference of a contributing structure.
Good point.
You're thinking that it talks about, we can talk about this later.
Yeah.
But I don't, okay. I'll mark that.
Yes, those apply.
All right, Matt.
All right. So our next project is 701 East Front Street for Mohammed Rafe and Sadaf Hassan. And, interesting. Okay, and the property owners are the same. And they've provided some basic description of the work, which is to elevate the home and the bit of mechanical system. And they reference various sections of the guidelines, and they provided some description of the materials, which are also described in detail later. And they have signed and dated that application. Here is the reference context aerial view here. You can see the subject property is identified with the blue box, and you can also see there is very little area around the building, although I have to say this GIS map does have the box shifted a bit to the north.
So, Matt, if I can interrupt, do we have an applicant tonight?
Yes. Yeah.
Do we have the form that authorizes the representative to represent the applicant? Oh, you are the applicant, okay. All right.
I feel not much lovely,
So my apologies.
No problem.
So, let's see. So this is a photo of the house from the front, and then also an idea of the streetscape in which it is placed, at least the immediate streetscape, and a more frontal view here, and then a closer up view of the corner of the house. You also see some of the sidewalk, and also the proximity of the bottom of the steps to the sidewalk. That will become an issue. So let's see, and then context with the neighboring house to the house to the north. As you can imagine, elevating this particular house. Right? So, whoops. Is this the applicant's photo? Yes, the applicants also have their own photos. Again, similar angles. This one actually better view of the front steps. And then from the top of the steps looking down, it may be a little hard to see, but maybe not. The bricks with the darker joints in them are actually flat and coplanar with the sidewalk, whereas the other ones, which are actually all facing towards the street or oriented towards the street, those are all the treads for the steps. All right. This then is the rear stairway, which will also be affected by the elevation. This crosshatched area in the front is their driveway, and so the stairway, notice, has a brick platform here, and then the wooden steps that go up. We'll get another photograph here in a second. But there is also at the bottom of the stairs here, and next to the platform, is a brick wall, just to keep that in mind as well. So another pair of views of the platform landing at the bottom, and also to note that the landing then has stairs that go off to the other side as well, to their backyard. And then this photograph looking up the steps, so you get some idea of the scale and details of that. This is an elevation certificate of the existing condition. So it shows, first of all, this is circled here to show there are currently no flood openings in the building. And also the current first living floor level is 9.5 feet above sea level. And the base flood elevation is 9 feet, and then with the obligatory 3 feet, the 2 plus 1, brings us up to 12.5 feet. 12 feet as the required height for any elevation. So the lowest elevation for the HVAC stuff is currently at 8.6 feet above sea level, and the highest grade around the building is 5.9, and the lowest is 4.8. So somewhere in the 5 to 6 foot range is the adjacent grade, and they'll be going up to 12 feet. So we'll have about 6 feet of foundation. And so these are some photographs that are included in the elevation certificate. We don't need to go through those, but that's just part of the document. Other than this does show, I think the one image we have of the actual HVAC unit on a platform, and then the ductwork which goes through the platform and underneath into the crawl space, the current crawl space of the house, and some of those elevations. So now this is the proposed elevation certificate. So they're proposing to add 9 flood openings. And the proposed floor elevation is, on this one, is 13 feet. Didn't I just say it had to be 12? Yes. So I think we've had the applicant indicate that will be changed to 12. So the drawings show 12. The elevation certificate will be changed to reflect that. And the lowest elevation of the equipment will also be then 11. And the grades are slightly different than they were before, but not exactly relevant. So, and this also includes photographs again. And now, so this is the proposed foundation plan. I'm sorry, this is the existing. This is the existing one, correct. The existing foundation plan. And you can see it's peppered with piers throughout, but around the perimeter as well. And it already includes the bumped out pilasters we'll see in a second. But the other thing to note is that the actual perimeter of the foundation, it does go around the front porch as well, and the front wall is actually just a wall through the middle of the floor plate. All right, anything else there? So the new foundation plan is this, which is using, since they are proposing to elevate the house on top of the existing foundation stays in place, but they are augmenting it as well for a number of reasons, but one of which is structural. And so they're adding a few more piers, particularly these 4 here and these 4 here. And then they're also adding a concrete ring around the perimeter piers to and reinforce them and their stability as the foundation walls get larger, and to help resist any potential waves or water action. Let's see, and this also references various sections through the walls. I think we discussed these in the meeting. Maybe I don't need to go through this as much as I did in the previous one with a room full of unfamiliar people. So here the main thing is that the structural section does show 12 feet up here. Can you guys all see that? It says 12 feet?
Okay.
Yeah. And same thing on this one over here, it says 12 feet. So we need to make sure that that 12-foot measurement is really to the top of the floor. All right. And here
Max,
it is again.
excuse me, does it say min or max? Shouldn't it say
Yeah,
max?
it would be maximum also.
Okay.
Right. Good point.
Good catch.
All right, so then for the various designs, this is the existing plan view of the front steps. As we elevate all these things, we have to add more steps. So this is existing, and then this is the proposed. That basically will be filling out to the edge of the sidewalk with the required number of steps, and extending, basically removing the existing steps and reconstructing a similar set of steps with new materials, or reusing as much of the existing as possible. Let's see. Then, so the side view of the existing steps is like this, and then the new one will be this. So you'll see that they're also adding some railing, some iron hand railing. It will not be to code, because code has the spaces too wide. The spacing needs to be 3 inches maximum between each of the pieces. And then that is a front view of it. And so what the front view is now also showing is the elevation, is the increase in the foundation height on the left. And they're also adding these 4 openings, this lattice or pattern in the existing brick, in order to provide the flood openings. All right. Let's see what else we have. Then for the rear, this is the existing rear stairway with 3 treads and 2 treads going out in either direction. There's a little planter here. The brick wall is on the left. And now we'll go to the proposed plan. So we're adding about 4 feet, did I say 4 feet of, 3 to 4 feet of height to the structure. So all the additional steps are shown here, coming down into the driveway as well as into the backyard. And we'll see that in a second, some of the details. So previously it was brick. Now, are you proposing concrete now for the new landing?
Right, just like it's not a landing, it'll still be concrete with the brick on top.
Right.
Carry across the
Oh,
wall.
okay, yes, you'll need to come up to the
should be
microphone. Thank you. Were you sworn in when you got here?
I was Rafi Hassan, East Front Street.
Yeah, okay. Excellent.
So I'll make sure, because she'll be like, hey, who are you and where do you live?
All right, perfect. Sorry about all these extra little questions. So that's the way the elevation of the rear step is now, rear steps. And the new one will be like this. So that's why I asked about the landing. The landing will now be much higher than it was before, and so a new material potentially. So at the same time, we'll see here that the side of the stair, or underneath the rear porch actually, or stoop, is going to be enclosed with these louvers. Is it louvers or just slats?
They were louvers. The current ones are louvers. So we're just taking the same design, just pushing the same height that we move up, or just making it a little bit larger.
And so otherwise, and your wall along the back is getting taller, I believe?
No, the wall should stay the same.
The wall stays,
correct.
Well, it's from 74 going up to 96 inches.
Just like the elevation certificates, that could have been a typo.
Well, okay.
I'll take a look at that though, because I think once the plan wasn't to increase the wall because of the pier. That's probably reflecting the pier, but we wouldn't have raised that up. So I think that's just a typo from the drawings there.
Okay. And then, let's see. This is then what a theoretical elevation view. If you remove that wall, this is what you would see, the railing going in two directions, and then the wooden steps going up to the upper floor. Now that should be the same number of risers, 6 risers.
Correct. It should be 4, I think, on the current drawing.
Yeah. Okay. So either those get larger and fewer, or you get less of them and move your landing higher. Okay. So let's see. So then we have an overall view from the along the driveway side. So the front is on the right and the back is on the left. And so you also see that when the current elevation is like this, with it already have those holes in there?
So if I could, yes, the elevation certificate said 13, should have been 12. Obviously a topographical error. And the first elevation certificate said none, and we highlighted it, which is awesome, thank you. But in the photographs, you'll see we've already got the flood vents in there because when we built it the first time, you anticipate the flood. And thank God they were there 5 years ago now, when it got demolished again. Those help keep the flood waters flowing out of the house like they should. So.
Okay. So you're going to be retaining at least the ones that you have in there.
Correct.
All right. And this gives you an overall view of that side of the house. And then on the opposite side, same kind of situation with the existing condition and the existing access door there, and you can see the existing HVAC unit on the platform there. And now the new condition will be this here. All right, I think no questions or points to make there. So other than that, this is our zoning and inspections form. The zoning official has determined it meets the requirements of the land use ordinance, and a zoning permit application is required. And the chief building inspector said building and floodplain development permits are required. So whenever you're ready, I'm ready with my staff report.
Okay, and so I just have one quick question. Do we have any public comment? All right, the one member of the public has waved me off, so I think we've satisfied that requirement. Mr. Raffay, did you have anything that you would like to add that Matt did not cover that you think we need to know?
I'll just say this, that we saved this house back in 2004, moved it from over here. So I think some folks might have been around here. That was a shot you saw. We did it the first time. We wanted to make it sure it sticks around as part of New Bern as a Hugh Levick Husson house. So I'm happy to do it.
And I'll add that it was cut in half to move it.
Yes, sir, it was. It was.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, maybe we could get some quick Staff comments?
Sure. The staff report is for Mohammed Rafe Hassan and Sadaf Kaifi Hassan, right? 701 East Front Street, and the project, same as the project address, and the historic property name and date is the Hugh Lubbock House, built in 1898 and moved in 2003.
So Matthew, I would just make sure for the record that the historic property name is Hugh Lubbock Hassan House.
Ah, okay. All right, and then the status is that it's a contributing structure. The National Register inventory description for this from 2003 gives you the basic description, which is unrelated to elevating the structure. And then Sandbeck description, I did pull out this little bit here. This charming mansard roofed cottage was built in 1898 for Hugh J. Lubbock, according to deed records and Sanborn insurance maps dating to 1888. The house incorporates within its present walls an earlier L-shaped dwelling which had stood on the site. This is from when it was back at the old site. The circa 1882 Gray's map and various lease agreements for the property referred to the earlier structure as a school. Lubbock soon emerged as one of New Bern's earliest promoters of motion pictures. At the south end of the 5-bay facade is a projecting 3-sided bay. The south end of the facade is a projecting 3-sided bay, a feature which still survives from the earlier structure according to the Sanborn maps. Maybe that's true or not. The present classically detailed front porch was added between 1908 and 1913. For 708 East Front Street, the project is to include the elevation of an existing 2-story structure on top of the existing foundation with revisions to the front and rear stairs and the mechanical systems. Staff submits the following historic district design principles and standards, aka guidelines, that may be appropriate to this application. For utilities, 2.3.1 and 2. For landscaping, 2.4.3. For design principles, 3.1.1 and 4. For modifications, 3.2.1 and 2. For foundations, 4.1.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. For entrances, 4.4.1 and 2. For masonry, 5.1.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. For wood, 5.2.1 and 2. For metals, 5.3.1 and 3 and 4. And for paint, 5.4.1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. The statements of reason based on the information contained in the application and staff's judgment are: 1, the project is located in a tight weave development pattern. 2, the project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary ADCs. 3, the structure is a contributing resource. 4, elevating the structure helps protect it from future damage and potential destruction or demolition. 5, the proposed design components and materials meet the requirements of the Historic District Design Standards, aka guidelines. 6, the zoning administrator and the chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly. And 7, the project is not incongruous with the guidelines. And the HPC may want to consider the following condition: that revised plans, according to the changes agreed upon at the hearing, shall be submitted by the applicant to the HPC staff for approval according to the guidelines and prior to the final inspection by the Building Inspections Division. That's the end of our report.
Very good. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Well, I think from a big picture standpoint, this is a unique structure architecturally for downtown New Bern. It certainly has an interesting history on how it was cut in half and moved. The owner is taking the initiative and making the investment to protect the structure from future flooding, and I think the approach is a kind and gentle effort to raise the structure.
In other words, jack it up.
I think it was of interest how you're going to reuse the older bricks, as you commented.
Yes, sir. When we moved the house, we had Collins Moving did it, just for sake of reference, Collins Moving. And when you move the house, you think, oh, it's traditional foundation, maybe it's a poured wall or something, but it was all that old brick. So I was deployed in the Marines during the times. My wife and family took trailer loads of brick from Middle Street, and that's what we used to do the infill of that process there. And then just one other little tidbit. When we raised it, Mr. Thompson, Mr. Collins' grandson is going to raise the house. So we're kind of keeping all this together. So hopefully we can keep the history on this piece of property going.
Awesome, thank you.
Very nice.
As far as changes or clarifications, we did only have two that I know of. Is 12-foot maximum, and second was the wall at the back is 74 inches, not 96.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that. I think that was just a typo, but I'll make sure we get the right stuff to you guys.
But it's not changing.
And Jim, I
Sure.
think the third was there was a proposed flood elevation certificate that had the wrong number.
Okay,
Right.
right.
And I actually did have a fourth one, which was then just adjust your drawings for the correct location of the landing of the back steps.
Okay, can do, yeah. Okay.
So, some of you may have some additional thoughts, but while you are formulating your questions or your next action, I suggest we have a condition that covers the three things we just talked about. Correcting the proposed flood elevation certificate, confirming the correct height of the masonry wall that appears on the end of the steps, and then confirming the accuracy of risers and treads in the drawings.
And the wall height at the roof.
And, yeah.
You had that in there.
So there's four, yeah.
Well, the height of the wall, and it's just one wall that is in question, 74 or 96.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so with that said, are any other comments? Are we ready for a motion?
Yes.
Could we have a motion?
It's too long.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move we find the application for a certificate of appropriateness for 701 East Front Street. I gotta get my cheat sheet. To be not incongruous with New Bern's Code of Ordinance, Section 15411 to 15429, and New Bern's Historic District Guidelines, based on the following specific guidelines and findings of fact. Utilities 2.3.1, 1 and 2. Landscaping 2.4.3. Design principles 3.1.1 and 4. Modifications 3.2.1 and 2. Foundations 4.1.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Entrances 4.4.1 and 2. Masonry 5.1.1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wood 5.2.1 and 2. Metals 5.3.1 and 3 and 4. Paint 5.4.1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. Findings of fact, the project is located in the tight weave development pattern. Project is located within the primary, secondary, and tertiary ABCs. The structure is a contributing resource. Elevating this structure helps protect it from future damage and potential destruction or demolition. 5, the proposed design, components, and materials meet the requirements of the Historic District Guidelines, also standards, also known as guidelines. The zoning administrator and chief building official have reviewed this project and commented accordingly, and the project is not incongruous with the guidelines. The revised plans agreed upon at the hearing should be incorporated in your drawings and should include the exterior rear wall will remain at the current height of approximately 74 inches. The maximum height of the first floor, lower part of the first floor is 12 feet. You'll provide a revised elevation certificate for the proposed location and a revised front step drawing showing the side view and treads.
Okay, I think we have a motion. And we've got a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Can we have a motion to issue a certificate?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. I'm assuming there's no discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Rob, you're in business.
Wait. We want to also take a vote on the written decision.
That's right, we have it, yes.
Okay, and
Written decision.
We made alternations, didn't we?
That's the other one that was on your desk.
Good.
The
Do
only
we have to-
alteration was that the conditions for this
says revised plans according to the changes agreed upon at the hearing shall be submitted by the applicant, the HPC staff for approval according to the guidelines prior to the final inspection by the Building Inspections Division.
That should serve the purpose.
Is that an accurate representation of what the motion was?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll revise it for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think the motion went on beyond that.
Yep. Okay.
Okay. So,
That's
Rafa, so you've got a little business with Matt?
Too easy. You want me to do it before I head back to Virginia, or do it during the week?
Yeah, so you're in good shape.
You can do it whenever you want. You won't get your COA until you do.
Tell
Awesome.
me.
I have one question if I could on the elevation certificate.
Yep.
That elevation certificate's due once we get it up, correct? And
yeah,
I need to check with you guys is because I talked to Matt, city inspector, about that elevation certificate being more than it's probably a typo versus I'm going to 13 feet. Would never do that. Law-abiding citizen, if you will.
Yep.
But the current elevation certificate is good. We're going up, and I think it's supposed to be done once it's been elevated. I did this just to make sure we were where I was at.
So I think your choice, you are correct, but it's part of your application. And
Okay.
So either withdraw the proposed because it's meaningless.
Absolutely. That's great then. If I say just get rid of that and just
then
get rid of it.
at the end of the day, I imagine inspections will have you prepare one to verify that you built
Absolutely,
to
they
the
will.
correct.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure
So,
I'm
yeah.
on the same sheet.
Yep.
Good.
Tell Ms. Sadaf I said hello.
I will. This is great, and thank you for your time. This takes up a lot of time, but I think these are important things, and
Yep.
you all doing
Thank
great
you.
work. Thanks.
We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate what you're doing.
Nice project.
All right. Well, I've lost myself. I think we've arrived at old business, and I'm unaware of any.
Matt?
I'm sorry. Let's page down here. And or look at the hard copy. We have no old business.
Okay. Any general public comment? Oh, thank you so much. I'm unaware of any new business we might have.
That's correct.
All right. Anything in your HPC administrator's report that you need to elaborate on this evening?
Just to point out that the enumerated projects are for a 2-month time period because we did not have this meeting last month.
Okay.
So
Duly noted.
May look different otherwise.
All right. And commissioners, item C, reports on minors, or B for that matter, minors or majors. Anything that anybody wants to talk about?
I have one other question.
Yep.
I'm preparing some certificates of appreciation for the HPC members who have left the board in the past 2 years or so. So there's quite a few of them. Would you prefer that we do that publicly at this forum here, either at the beginning or end of the next regular meeting, or would you prefer that that happen then, not so publicly though, at our design review meetings?
I think traditionally that's happened at a public meeting.
Yes. Okay. Good.
And your choice on where it happens in the agenda.
Okay. All right.
I was just thinking it might be considered to do it first so they don't have to stick through the meeting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
That was going to be my thought too. All right. Perfect.
Okay.
Make us sit through it.
All right.
Sometimes they-
Item 9, any commissioner comments? Thank you.
Well, did we introduce Commissioner Wika?
Well,
We did at the workshop.
But not at the official hearing for the
yeah,
audience.
that's my mistake.
Yeah.
I should have done that. So this is Mike Wika, and Mike comes from a government background. And Mike, if you would, as I have left you out in the cold. I obviously did not prepare and study up on your resume. Give us a little bit about your background.
Thanks.
What
I'll
you've
do
got.
it very briefly, considering the late hour. But yes, I did have a government background in when I was working as a city manager, deputy city manager, and utilities director. Lived in New Bern for the last year and a half, working on an old house on Johnson Street.
Good for you.
And hopefully won't have to come back to this board for another application in the near future.
Very good. Well, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. And I enjoyed meeting you at Design Review, and obviously we'll be seeing a lot more of each other. All right. Any other commissioner comments? Motion to adjourn, perhaps?
Second.
All right. We stand adjourned.
Awesome.